We have at least half an hour to our scheduled time for questions and answers. Of course, Bill has given us a lot of insights, some of which I think probably all of us will admit were surprising or not what we had expected. At least I felt that way about a number of his findings. So let's start with questions. Who would like to take the first? Ambassador Cleveland. Take the mic. Take the mic, please.
Paul Cleveland. Yeah. The numbers indicate, and you seem to have assumed all the way through your talk, that this group, Chikowi and company, are in fact going to end up as president and leading the country. There's a lot of concern that Prabowo may try to upset that through this court process and so on. Could you comment on that?
Yes, we'll know more. This is the wonderful thing about Indonesian politics. We'll always know more 24 hours from now than we know now. That's a standard response because events make it possible. So I looked at the news reports a couple hours ago. As David said at the beginning, Prabowo has until tomorrow to make a complaint to the Constitutional Court. And he apparently plans to do that. And he has said they had a meeting at PKS headquarters, the Islamist Party headquarters. And it's apparently PKS people who have come up with these findings of discrepancies between the KPU results and the results that would show Prabowo the winner. And so they're going to take those results to the Constitutional Court tomorrow, presumably. I'm not sure about Hatta Rajasa at the moment. He seemed to have bailed out of the campaign entirely as recently as 3 days ago, but yesterday he appeared at this meeting. He didn't make any statement or anything, but he was at the meeting at PKS where Prabowo and he were presented with this presumably counter-finding. Well, now, everybody who has been following this, we have kawalpemilu.org, this guardthevote.org group that has been independently tallying the vote from the vote has been reported by polling place, has been reported publicly by the KPU. And so anybody can go in there and add it up. And they've been This group, protectthevote.org, Kawal Pemilu, has been doing an independent tallying, and they came up with the same results as the KPU. Plus, of course, we had the quick counts before and so forth. So it's pretty clear what the actual outcome is. And the KPU says, we're ready. If Prabowo goes to the Constitutional Court, we have all of the data that will support our findings. So I suspect that's what's going to happen. Prabowo is going to make that charge. I don't know who is going to be with him exactly, whether Hatta Rajasa will stand with him, PKS, whoever, but he's going to make that claim to the court, and then we will see how that plays out. My expectation is that it's not going to take very long to play out. It's going to be like the U.S. Supreme Court in Bush v. Gore, one of whose arguments was the country cannot wait a long time, uncertain about who the president is, and therefore we have to make a decision quickly, the Constitutional Court will say. And so I think the KPU says they're ready, and so if the charge is made, they will have their counter evidence, and then we'll see what plays out. But that's it, as far as I can see. I mean, all of the other concerns about is Prabowo going to mobilize paramilitary and storm Jakarta and stuff like that, whatever probability there was of that, a month or two ago, no longer exists.
Next question. Yes.
Okay, is there a mic? Oh, hi. Okay, so Bob Pringle, former Foreign Service, et cetera, et cetera. There's been a lot of talk in the past, generally speaking, very soundly paced, that these coalitions were terrible, they were completely irrational, and they were distracting to voters because they didn't add up to anything, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like you to comment on what I'm about to say, which is that it seems to me there's a kind of feeling about this this alignment that made a lot of sense. And it strikes me that what you're seeing is the shape of a sort of blue versus red, highly fuzzy-wuzzy, if you will, on both sides, but nonetheless, you've got looking at it, you've got on Jokowi's side, you've got the traditional old-style NU Islam, which oddly enough has become the more liberal branch of Islam.
Right.
You've got on the other side definitely the more fundamentalist brand of Islam. No hint of military affinities, of course, on Jokowi's side. A definite hint of military on Prabowo's side. You've got the people image on one side, the sort of populist idea, the authoritarian thing on the other side. You've got a basically liberal almost versus conservative. I'm not going to say Republican or Democrat in this gathering alignment there.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
you think
for me, I basically agree with that. Let me just, but you know, in a country that has 10 political parties and is a presidential system, there's an issue. You know, I mean, we have a big problem in our country, and it's gotten worse in the last several years because we have a divided House of divided House of Representatives that obstructs the president and everything that he wants to do. And this is the same claim that has been made in Indonesia about Yudhoyono, that he himself claims that he cannot do things that he wants to do because he's being obstructed by Parliament. I basically think that he has been looking for the easy way out on most issues, and that the fact of the matter is that he could have negotiated much better deals with Parliament than he in fact did, both within his coalition and by bringing in people from other coalitions and so forth. But so we will see. I have an ex-graduate student, Jayadi Hanan, who wrote a book on this subject in which he argues that there is plenty of data to show that, in fact, there is much less polarization and much less gridlock in Indonesia under Yudhoyono than there has been under Obama in the United States. This is another area. You know, 70% of Indonesians vote. What percentage of Americans vote? Gridlock is characteristic of the United States, but not of Indonesia. So there's a debate about this. But there are, I think, all kinds of ways in which a president can get what he wants out of the parliament in Indonesia, and we are going to see Jokowi trying to do that. And I'm talking with my ex-graduate student here about the various ways in which he thinks people are doing this and stuff like that. So there's the whole literature policy-oriented literature going to develop about this. I'll just add one thing to this, which is that to me, the fundamentalist Muslims, the conservative Muslims who were so much a part of Yudhoyono's coalition and constricted him and will not be a part of Jokowi's coalition, we think, although that remains to be seen how that develops. But the PKS, the Islamist party, the Muslim Brotherhood Party, was in fact the most obstreperous on this issue of fuel oil subsidies. President Yudhoyono was trying to reduce those subsidies so that his budget would not be totally eaten up by them. And it was the PKS, a party in his coalition, that was most standing in the way of that. So it was an economic issue rather than a religious issue on which I think the PKS caused the most problems within the governing coalition. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, it fits with what you were saying. This looks like it may be a right versus left coalition, if that makes any sense. By right, I mean pro-market.
Barbara Harvey, and then we'll go to others.
Barbara Harvey, also retired Foreign Service. I wanted to ask Bill about Yusuf Kala and Golkar. Some of the things I've read have indicated that possibly he's more popular than Abu Rizal Bakri within Golkar, and that he might be able to bring Golkar over to the Jokowi side of things. Right. What's your view on that?
It's mainly about political resources rather than popularity, says the political scientist. And of course, money is a political resource, but not the only one. And Abu Rizal Bakri has had more of that money than many other Indonesians, and he has therefore bought a lot of support in Golkar. But I think those days are over. And the reason why is in a democratic process, he couldn't turn that influence and money into votes, either for Golkar, which is just so-so, but especially for himself personally as a presidential candidate. So I think we will see him out very quickly from Golkar, and he will be replaced by somebody comfortable to Yusuf Kala. And Yusuf Kala doesn't want it himself. His answer is, I did that. Been there, done that. Was Yusuf Kala's answer, but he wants to be vice president. Yusuf Kala really wants to be president, and my hope is that he will be careful enough to not get in Jokowi's bad graces as he got into Yudhoyono's bad graces by being too assertive. But he wants to govern. He wants to govern. That's what Yusuf Kala wants to do. He wants to govern the country. He's got lots of ideas and good negotiating skills and so forth. So he is one of the people who may be the good negotiator with Parliament. But anyway, his main resource now is political power. He controls, he is half of the team controlling the government. And Golkar has never been out of government. And this is a very powerful force. Those people are very uncomfortable with the idea of being in the opposition, Golkar. And so all this talk about permanent majority, that was what Prabowo was claiming a few days ago. We have a permanent majority, meaning our coalition is more than 50% of the seats in parliament. That was total BS at the moment that it was issued, and it's a lot more so now. So, we will see the bigger danger is there not being enough of an opposition. Too many parties joining the bandwagon.
Let's go to the back. Well,
Jerry Hyman from the Center for Strategic International Studies. I wonder if I could follow that question and ask you to give some perhaps thoughts or predictions, if you're willing, on the political parties generally, Garindra, Golkar, and the Democrat Party, especially in light of your comments about party affiliation.
Right. The first thing to be said, I hope this is an answer to your question. The first thing to be said about political parties is that one of the main drivers of them is the appeal of the particular politician who leads that party. That's not the only thing. So I'll add something in a moment, but that's a very powerful driver. And so we saw PDIP, Megawati's party, got 34.7% of the vote in 1999. Roughly doubling the vote that her father's party, this is too simple, but in 1955, the PNI, the old party of Sukarno and so forth, got roughly 20% of the vote, and his daughter got 40% of the vote. They're almost. The reason for that is because she was perceived as the next leader after Suharto. She was the opposition to Suharto. All of the opposition forces coalesced upon her. But she then drove the support for the party. Nonetheless, PDIP has some life of its own because it does indeed go back to the 1920s and so forth. But Garindra, so far, has been almost entirely only the vehicle of Prabowo. There is the vice governor of Jakarta, and I'm sorry, I can't give you the right answer to this. I am clueless as to why Ahok, the vice governor of Jakarta, is a Garindra person. I've got to find that out. I am also clueless as to why Ridwan Kamil, who is the very popular mayor of Bandung, is in this party, because that indicates, that there is some independent reason for people to be in a political party. The Party Democrat was only SBY's vehicle. And you can see, what did it get? Less than 10% of the vote in this 2014 election. It got 20% of the vote in 2009, 7% of the vote in 2004 when it was a brand new party. And all that SBY needed was to have enough votes so that he could put together a coalition that would nominate him for president. That's what he did in 2004. And then by 2009, because he was such a popular president, these figures, this incumbency figures, he hasn't always been that popular. It goes up and down. But basically, he has been a popular president, and the popularity of Parti Demokrat, his party, is caused by his popularity. So that's a very important part of the Indonesian political system. Now we'll see with Jokowi, it's going to play, is Jokowi going to make PDIP more popular? Probably.